Shari here today, and I am going to be making this fun card where we use the stitched umbrella to change it into a little parachute. So I'm using this little rabbit from the Extra Special Easter, the one that has his hands up in the air because I think it looks like he would be floating down with a parachute. And I'm just going to put that in my Misty and stamp it with some jet black ink because I'm going to do some Copic coloring here. So I am using the E70s. This is kind of a nice taupey brown. I like it because it's not as yellowy. It's just a nice color. So I'm going to go in with the lightest, and I just did color all over this bunny. Now I'm going to go in with my middle tone, add in some shaded spots, and then I'll go in with my darkest and just add a little bit more shading. And then I'm going to go back in with the medium tone, kind of blend out that darker one. And then finally, I'll go back with my lightest marker and blend everything out so it looks all even. Just some very simple shading. Now for the ears, I'm going to go in with an R11 and just add that very pale pinky color there. And then I have some very pale E00 and E000. And I'm using that for his belly, and I actually added a little bit of that R11 as well, just so it had a little pink tone to it to match his ears. I'm also going to go in with the R11 and add some little rosy cheeks. Now this will just kind of take away that brown and give some rosy cheeks there. And then finally, I'm going to use a white gel pen and add some details. So I just put a little dot in his cheeks and just some little highlight details on his body, his ears and his arms and his legs there. So I'm going to use the coordinating die to cut this out. I'm just going to hold that in place with some washi tape and run it through my die cut machine. Now to work on my background and my scene. So I'm going to use the Really Rainbow Scallops. I'm going to use that blue scallop there, and that is going to be my background and my sky. So you can see I have the largest outside in stitched rectangle, and that's what I'm going to use to cut out the sky. And that way when I put it on a card base, I'm going to have a little bit of a border around it. Next, I'm going to work on my mountains. So I'm going to use spiffy speckles, I'm going to use the purple, and I'm also going to use the pink color in the spiffy speckles. And I'm just using that same rectangle die just to cut out a piece, because this is going to go around the bottom, but it'll have that nice finished edge and match the other rectangle. So this is going to stack against the bottom, and I can just lay my bunny on here and kind of figure out the spacing of where I want him, and then I'll know where I want my mountains, and I can just hold that in place as well with the washi tape and run it through my die cut machine. So the purple mountains are going to be a little taller. These are the purple ones here, and I'm using the larger of the mountain border dies. And these are going to kind of be in the background. So I'm just checking that I have enough room there for the lower ones. And then I've cut a piece of the pink spiffy speckles with that same rectangle die. And I'm going to cut the smaller mountain border die to go in front of it. So this will just be some subtle layers because these aren't going to be too contrasting, the purple and the pink. But you're going to see a little bit more interest because I'll have the two layers together. Now I didn't do any grass because my bunny's up in the sky. I thought about it, I cut some green, and then I decided he was going to be too close to the ground to look like he was floating, so I decided against that. Now I have some rainbow stripe paper. This is from the Really Rainbow collection, so it's an older collection, but I really love this paper, and I think that a striped parachute would be super cute. I'm actually going to cut it on the 45 though, so that my stripes go up and down rather than diagonal. And I felt like this got a lot more of the color into my umbrella here. So it's actually really easy to line it up in the corner there. You just line up that point of the umbrella with the stripes. You can get it nice and straight. I also cut the frame part from that stitch umbrella die from some Narwhal cardstock just to give it some definition of those different pieces there. So you can see how that's going to look in the spacing. So now to assemble my little parachute, the first thing we need to do is, of course, cut off that little tip that's at the top that's part of the umbrella. So this will make it look more like a parachute to cut that off. And then I can layer the frame over top. Now, if I had cut this parachute from solid, I don't know that I would have used the frame because you can see the stitching detail, which is super cute. But on the stripes, it's kind of lost in there and it kind of gets missed. So I feel like the frame really helped. And then I'm just laying this face down on the frame rather than picking it up and getting the glue on my fingers. So there's my little parachute. Now I'm going to assemble my background here. So I've cut out some stitch clouds and I'm just going to put those down with liquid glue. I'm going to let the edge hang off and I'm going to trim that off with my scissors here in a minute. Now those mountains are not glued down yet and I'm going to tuck some of these smaller clouds behind those purple mountains. Now that all my clouds are down, I can trim off the extra that's overhanging the sides. And then I'll start putting the mountains on. So I'm going to use some adhesive runner to put those purple ones just straight down to that background. Layering it over those clouds I put on there. And then I'll do the same thing with the pink mountains. And I'm just going to layer them flat onto the background. I'm going to pop up the parachute and the bunny rabbit with some foam adhesive, so I thought it would be good to kind of have the background as flat as possible. And I changed my mind on the white card base, so this is a fog card base, a card base made from the fog cardstock, but I think that it made the clouds pop a little better than the white one did. So that's why I changed that up. Now to make my little parachute, I've got some pink string here and I've got some mini glue dots and I'm just going to pick these mini glue dots up with my craft knife here and I'm going to put one at each of these lower points of this umbrella shape. And this will be where I'm going to put my string. So these dots will hold the string. So I've got my pieces of pink string here. I've just cut it into 4 pieces. They're very much longer than they need to be, but I'm just going to tack those down to each of those little glue dots at each of those points. And that glue dot will hold that string in place just fine. So now I can pull them taut from each of those points and kind of make my parachute shape. You can see how that's going to kind of work there. So now I've put a very larger glue dot on the back of the rabbit, and that's because I need to stick 4 strings to it. I've put both the parachute and the rabbit face down on the card base so that I can get the spacing between the parachute and the bunny correct. I was going to do it on my craft mat and realized that I might have it too high or too low. So it's better to put it on here, make sure I don't get that rabbit too low so I've got room for my sentiment below. And then I can just take each of those strings and pull it nice and straight and taut and then attach it to that glue dot that's on the back of the rabbit and it will hold it in place. So now that I have all those strings in place, I can just trim off all that extra string below that glue dot on the back of that rabbit. How cute is that? This would actually be kind of cute hanging. So I've put some foam adhesive squares on the back of the parachute and the back of the bunny, and actually I'm not going to pull off the backers of the ones on the bunny just yet because he's kind of moving around on those strings. I didn't want him to kind of get caught in the wrong place. So I am going to put down the parachute first, and I'm just using my mat to make sure it's nice and centered. And then I can just flip the bunny over and pull off the backer pieces that are on those foam adhesives. And this will allow me to get that bunny pulled down and pull those strings nice and tight. So now for the sentiment, I'm using the sentiment that says hang in there. And this is from the Sloth set. And I'm just putting it on my Misty so that I make sure it's stamped nice and straight since I'm stamping directly onto my card. And I'm actually using the Narwhal ink, so this will match the parachute that has the Narwhal cardstock. Now for some accents. So I'm using some Stickles here in purple and in pink, and I'm just adding a little bit of glitter to the tops of my mountains. I'm also going to use a clear Stickles glitter for some accents on the clouds as well. So I'm just going to draw a little bit of an arch just on the tops of those puffy clouds. I'm not going to outline them completely, but just a little bit of sparkle in the clouds. Now here is my little place where I keep all my little die cuts that I just keep for embellishing. And like I've said before in videos, I keep a bunch of these little pink hearts cut. And this is where I store them, this little egg holder. And so I'm just adding a couple pink hearts just to pull out the pinks in that parachute. I just think that it adds a little bit of pop on that very pastel-y kind of background that I've got going on. I also added a few very small iridescent sequins onto some of the clouds. And then I felt like my parachute was lacking in some sparkle and shine, so then I went in with the disco ball Stickles, which are kind of a silvery gray, and just sort of outlined it so that there was some shine in the center there and not just shine all around that parachute, because it is the biggest focal point of this card. And here is my finished card. I just think this is a fun idea to use the umbrella in a different way. Thanks for watching. Have an amazing day. Bye.